Hi guys, today's title for our notes is 1-3, Algebraic Expressions. In our first video, we'll be going over the order of operations. If you don't remember what the order of operations is, it's called PEMDAS. Now when you're taking your notes, make sure to write your notes in the same format as what I have on the screen. I do have it formatted this way for a reason. PEMDAS is telling us what order we should do our operations in a math expression, so a problem that does not have an equal sign. In a math expression, we should always look for our parentheses first. Now, parentheses doesn't mean just regular parentheses. It could also mean like brackets or curly braces or like anything that's grouping a bunch of numbers together. So parentheses need to be done first. Also, parentheses does not mean everywhere you see a parentheses, you do that. Parentheses means look inside the parentheses. If there's any math happening inside the parentheses, you need to simplify that math down to a single number. So your goal on parentheses is to make a single number inside the parentheses. If it already is a single number, then that's not actually parentheses, and we'll talk about what that means a little bit later. Once the inside of your parentheses are a single number, then you can move on to the next letter, E, for exponents. Exponents are those little numbers that are written above the normal sized numbers. So in these examples, the exponents would be the 2, the 3, and the 4. Don't forget, an exponent is not saying multiply by 2 or multiply by 3. It's telling you how many times you should multiply a number by itself. Something to the third power means you multiply a number by itself 3 times. Once you've dealt with all the exponents, then you're going to move on to multiplying and dividing. Now, multiplying and dividing are written side by side because they get done at the same time from left to right. Multiplication can be drawn with a dot, or sometimes we draw multiplication with a parentheses. So if the parentheses is already a single number on the inside, that's actually going to be falling under the category of multiplying. For division, we can write a division symbol, or we can write it as a fraction. That would also mean dividing. Again, multiplication and division get done at the same time from left to right. You don't do all of your multiplying and then all of your dividing. You start at the beginning of the problem and you work your way through. And whatever symbol you see first, you do that first. And then if you see a different symbol next, you do that. And it's possible you're going to be switching back and forth. You might go multiply, divide, multiply again, and that's fine. You don't have to finish all the multiplying before you do all the dividing. The same is true for those last 2 letters, adding and subtracting. Adding and subtracting are done at the same time from left to right. They can be all mixed up. Just because subtracting happens first doesn't mean you have to do all of your subtracting and then all of your adding. You could go subtract, add, subtract again. It's just whatever order it's written in. Adding is written with plus signs and subtracting is written with minus signs. And again, adding and subtracting are done at the very, very end. They're the last thing you do in a problem, adding and subtracting. And you want to make sure that you're going in the order that they were written in. This is our order of operations. We're going to use our order of operations on problems that have a lot of numbers and then symbols. So something like this. Remember, this is called a numerical expression. All right, so when I'm doing my problems like this, I like to run through the order of operations in my head. So in my head, I'm going to be thinking about PEMDAS. Now for our PowerPoint, I'm going to write it down on the side of the PowerPoint. You don't need to write down the words. This is more showing you my thought process. So looking at this problem, the first question I ask myself is, does this problem have parentheses? And we have to be a little bit careful. While there's a set of parentheses in this problem, that's right here, that doesn't count for the parentheses for order of operations. This parentheses, since it already only has a single number in it, that is considered multiplication. So the answer to the question, are there parentheses that need to be done? The answer is no, there's not. I don't have any parentheses with math inside of them. All of my parentheses are already a single number. Next, I ask myself, are there exponents? And exponents, remember, are the smaller numbers. And the answer is yes, there are exponents. So right now, I'm going to do this right here. Now, I'm only going to do one thing at a time. I'm going to go slowly, one step at a time, so that I don't make any mistakes. Sometimes when we go too fast and we combine steps together, we have a tendency to make mistakes. All right, that takes care of all my exponents. So next the question is there multiplying and dividing? And the answer is yes, there's both. Now remember, we're not going to do the multiplying first every time. So next we need to ask ourselves, which one am I going to do first? Multiplying or dividing? And so we go to the problem and we start at the beginning. And if I'm starting at the beginning, the very first math operation I see is multiplication. Since I'm seeing that first, I'm going to do that first. So it's all about which one happens first in the problem. 5 times 7 happens first, so I'm going to do that first. Now I'm not done with my multiplying and dividing yet. I still have some more to do. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the problem. The next math symbol I see is a minus sign, but I'm not to subtracting yet. So I'm going to skip that. And the next math symbol I see is division. So next I'm going to do 6 divided by 2. Notice that I'm only changing one thing at a time. The 35 minus and the plus 9 were still there. I've now finished my multiplying and dividing. I'm ready to do my adding and subtracting. And again, we need to ask ourselves, which one should we do first? And it's all about which one is written first in the problem. So going to the beginning of the question, the first math symbol I see is this minus sign. So in this scenario, I'm actually going to do my subtracting first, because that's what occurs first. And now I'm down to one operation, so I'm ready to be done with my problem, and the answer to this question is 41. Again, please notice how I wrote out every step. This is how I expect your homework to look as well. One step at a time, going slowly, checking our work as we go along. Okay, for our next examples, I'm going to do all that writing. I'm going to just think it in my head. I'm not going to write it on the screen. So here's our second example. So the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, are there any parentheses with math inside? And the answer is, oh my gosh, yes, so much. We've actually got 3 different sets of groups, right? So we have a parentheses here. We have a parentheses here. We have another one here. Those brackets are considered parentheses. It's anytime you group stuff together, okay? And when you're doing your parentheses, you want to make sure that you're following your order of operations inside the parentheses as well. So when I have my parentheses here, I want to follow my order of operations, which means I need to do the innermost parentheses first. So the first thing I'm going to do is this 11 minus 2. Now I'm still working on my parentheses. I'm not quite done yet. So next I need to simplify them down to a single number. The only operations I have left are adding and subtracting. So I'm going to start with the first one that I see, 5 minus 1. Once you've got the parentheses down to a single number, you don't necessarily have to write the parentheses anymore. If you want to, you can, but it's not required. Now I'm still not done with parentheses. I still have a little bit more to do. I've got to get this parentheses down to a single number. So I'm going to do 9 plus 5, and I'm going to get that. Okay, that was like 3 lines of work before we finished the first letter of PEMDAS. All right, so now I'm done with parentheses. Now I'm ready to move on to my next letter, which is exponents. Now I know you're thinking, well, but I've already done some adding and subtracting. Can't I just keep going? Technically, we haven't done our adding and subtracting yet. We were just working on that first letter. So next I'm going to do exponents, which is this one right here. Don't forget that means 4 times 4. It does not mean 4 times 2. It means 2 number 4s. Now I only have one operation left, and so I'm going to finish up this problem. 16 plus 14 is 30. And that is the correct answer to this question. Okay, so again, remember step by step, and think about PEMDAS in your head while you're doing the problems. Do a little mental checklist. Where am I? P-E-M. For our final example, we're going to do a substitution problem. So here is an algebraic expression. An algebraic expression is something with variables. Now I know that I'm supposed to do substitution in this problem because part of the directions tell me that E is actually equal to 3 and F is actually equal to -5. And so I'm going to take those numbers and I'm going to substitute them into the original question. Substitution means that you're going to take the letter and you're going to erase it. And in its place, you're going to write this number instead. Now, you don't want to just write the number in there because the E had a 3 right in front of it. It had a coefficient. And we have to remember that coefficients are being multiplied with the variables. So I don't just want to write 3 and then another 3. That's going to look like 33. I want to write 3 times 3. So you can put a little dot for your multiplication symbol, or you can plug it in using more parentheses. Now, this problem already has enough parentheses, so I'm going to use a dot. I'm not going to use a dot for all of them, though, because when I get over here to this letter F, and I erase it and I replace it with a -5, well, -5, that can be kind of confusing when the numbers are negatives. So usually when we are substituting a negative number in for a variable, we will usually enclose that in some parentheses so that we remember this is a -5. It's not -5, it's -5. All right, so I've got all of my numbers plugged in. I've got every E was replaced with the number 3, and every F was replaced with the -5. And again, notice I put it in parentheses so that I remember this is a -5, and that's negative symbol is not, it's not subtracting 5. It's the number -5. Okay, and now I'm ready for PEMDAS. So the first thing on PEMDAS is parentheses, and I've got several parentheses again. Now remember, a parentheses with a single number on the inside, that doesn't count as a parentheses. So I've got a parentheses here, and I've got a parentheses over here. So I've got 2 sets of parentheses. All right, so both of these parentheses need to be brought down to just a single number. Now within the parentheses, I have multiplying, I've got adding, I've got subtracting. And so within a parentheses, I also need to follow my order of operations, which means that I need to do my multiplying before I do any adding or subtracting. If the multiplications are happening far enough apart, so in this problem, I have got multiplying that's being separated by like subtracting, and I've got multiplying that's being separated by adding. You can do those all at the same time, as long as they're not all just right in a row. Then you'd want to do them one at a time. Now I'm not quite done with my parentheses yet. I still have, this is still 2 numbers, and this is still 2 numbers. So I do need to keep going with my parentheses. And again, since these are completely separate parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and simplify those both at the same time. Now in this problem, I decided to leave the parentheses as part of the question because there was a number right in front of the parentheses. That means it was being multiplied. So I didn't want to get confused and accidentally write 234. So I wrote 2 parentheses 34. You also, if you wanted to, you could have written a dot here to mean multiplication. All right, we're done with the parentheses. So next we're going to do exponents, which there are none. So next we're going to do our multiplying and dividing. Now again, since these multiplying problems are separated by a plus sign, I can do them both at the same time. Finally, I'm going to finish up this problem with subtracting, and here's my final answer. So remember, order of operations, PEMDAS, really important anytime you're simplifying something that is only numbers. We'll talk about how to simplify something with variables on our next video.